If I had to start completely over in 2025, no clients, no momentum, here's exactly how I'd build a $10 million company from scratch. This isn't going to be about trends or gimmicks or fads. These are going to be the principles that I've used to help multiple companies grow past $10 million, and they will work for you. I'm Christian Montine. I work with owners and executives of companies doing 10 million or more in revenue. I help them scale, lead, or exit without chaos or burnout, and without breaking what already works in their company. My clients have added over $500 million in new revenue. They've tripled their valuations, and they've built companies that they're proud to own and or ready to sell. Now, in a minute, I'm going to walk you through how to bring overwhelming value to your customer, how to position your business as premium, and how to avoid one of the most common mistakes that stalls growth at around $3 million for most companies. But real quick, if this video has been helpful to you, hit subscribe. In my videos, I share principles for business owners who are serious about scaling past $10 million, building real systems, and creating companies that run well, especially when you're not in the room. And that last part matters more than most people realize. Now, these are the principles I'd follow if I had to start over from zero. They're not magic, but they do work. And once you've built a business that works, the next question is, what's it actually worth? To build a $10 million company, it's mostly about following basic principles consistently. If you do this, cumulatively over time, you'll get the results that you're looking for. It's like investing. If you're 20 years old or if you're 40 years old and you just start putting money away from each of your paychecks, over time, you'll start to build real wealth. The problem is most people don't use the disciplines that it takes to actually do that. Well, it's the same thing for building your business. If you just follow these basic practices or principles that I'm introducing, cumulatively over time, you'll get the results you're looking for. There's a couple of facts that you need to know first, though. In the United States, 91% of all businesses that exist never actually break $1 million. 96% of all businesses never break 10 million. So if you get to $10 million, you're in that top 4% of all businesses in the United States. This seems pretty surprising, I think, to most people. They assume there's a lot of other businesses out there doing numbers like that. But the reality is there aren't. And the reality is a $10 million company is still considered a smaller company. The steps for how you get there, or the principles for how you get there, though, are pretty consistent and pretty reliable across industry. And those are what I want to introduce to you today, having walked many different companies through that path and through that journey. More than my fair share, I would say. I've been able to see this. Now, the first thing that you want to do, and this is something that most entrepreneurs just don't do, is really begin with the end in mind. That's the first principle. It's a Stephen Covey quote. And what you want to do is develop a very, very clear picture of what does a $10 million version of your company actually look like. When you have that clear picture, it starts to inform the kinds of strategies that you should or you even have to pursue, and the ones that aren't going to work for you or be valuable. Let me give you some examples. The first question you want to ask yourself is, if I'm doing $10 million in revenue, what will the sales have to look like? So if you're a construction company doing 10 million in revenue, you can easily accomplish this with 10 $1 million projects. So if you have that in mind, that starts to give you a framework of what your company needs to look like and at what level it needs to be performing. Or it could be 20 $500,000 projects. Same thing, it starts to give you some understanding about what it needs to look like. If you're a medical practice, it's going to be a little bit different. On average, a medical provider, depending on their specialty and background, should be generating between $1.5 to $3 million a year in revenue. So if you want to build a $10 million practice, you'll probably need at least 3 or 4 providers in your clinic to make that work. That gives you an idea of some of the key factors that you need in terms of revenue. It also means that they'll need either full patient panels or that you'll have some kind of concierge program that'll be set up, and you want to price that out to see what would create a $10 million business in that space. If you're running coffee shops, you're going to have to sell, $1 million $10 coffees and donuts to get your coffee shop to work, which can sound like a lot, but if you're in a high-performing cafe that's selling maybe 1,000 cups a day, you can actually hit a third of that number with a single cafe. So maybe what you're really talking about is opening 3 cafes over the course of a few years to hit that $10 million number. Now, this won't just happen easily, it won't happen by chance, but now that you've got a clearer picture of what a $10 million version of you would look like, you can start to reverse engineer from there. How do you bring in these providers? Should they be partners or will you hire them? If it's a medical clinic, if you're running cafes and you want to do a coffee shops, are you going to open all three at once? Maybe, but probably not. So you're going to probably want to open one, but you realize how the volume that you're going to have to get up to and that you're going to want to be at. The other part of that picture that you want to think about is who are the key players that you're going to need to have in place. So if it's a construction company, usually you're thinking about how will project management be done, who's going to be do the estimating or bidding, and then maybe you don't have to define all of your crews, but usually just those key factors will start to give you a sense of, all right, this is the kind of team that I'll need to start to develop to get to there. So a typical PM can handle maybe 5, depending on the size and complexity of projects, maybe 5 to 10 projects is kind of common for a lot of project managers. And so you'd be thinking, we'll probably need around 2 to do a $10 million business, depending on the kind of projects that you do. Maybe more if you're doing more small projects. Again, I mentioned that you'll probably need 3 or 4 medical providers if you're opening a medical clinic. And then if you're doing cafes and you're going to be running probably 3 cafes at least, then you're going to want to think about your key managers and how you're training staff and how you're doing some of those staff management components and all of that. Now, here's a couple of other points with this is I encourage you, don't over plan. Some people get stuck in planning. Execution is key. As a friend of mine, Craig Ballantyne, says, success loves speed. So what you want to do is get a clear sense of direction, build a good enough plan or a general sense of how you're going to get there, and then really aim for your first year to be profitable. That's a goal that many entrepreneurs kind of surprisingly overlook, is they just think I'm going to work and I'm going to make money, but they don't really think about what will it take to be profitable at the end of the first year. And so that would be the second part of beginning with the end in mind, is not just where do I want to end in terms of what will $10 million look like, but what will the first profitable dollar look like as well. What will I need to do this year to make that happen? Now, all of that brings me to the second point, which is huge for entrepreneurs, which is mastering your mindset. Most entrepreneurs and anyone who's successful usually is pretty comfortable talking about the challenges that they experienced in terms of running their company. They often will talk about feeling fear or wrestling with perfectionism or wrestling with trust, wrestling with a scarcity mentality, or all of the different kinds of ways that we can kind of get in our heads and make it hard for us to act. The main point I want to make here, without unpacking all of that, is you have to be aware that there's likely to be mindsets that you have, that I have, that cause us to slow down, that create friction for us and prevent us from taking timely action, or push us into reactive action and not really being thoughtful about what we're trying to accomplish. When I work with the leaders of these companies that are growing to or past $10 million, the issues that we spend most of the time talking about and working on are mindset, not strategy, not tactics, but how they think, how they see themselves, how they see other people, and how they see the world around them. It's huge and it's important. So here's one simple tip that you can use that will help you grow faster, and that is to do the same thing that elite athletes do. They surround themselves with good coaches. They surround themselves with good competitors or teammates that will push them to run faster, to fight harder, to play better, whatever sport they're in. They surround themselves with good people that help them up-level their game. You want to do the same thing. That's the simplest and easiest tip that I can give to you in this area, is to make sure that you're around people that are playing at a higher level than you currently are. Not stratospherically higher, but they're at the next level, so that you can see where they're at and they challenge you and they know how to challenge you to get there. Additionally, I think it's valuable to bring in good coaches who are actually trained to help identify those mindsets and push you past them. Any good coach, I personally have a number of coaches that I work with on different topics. Any good coach I know with, any good consultant that I've ever met, always has at least one, if not more, coaches that they work with. Any high-performing entrepreneur that you know of does the same thing, because we all know that the trick to this game of really being successful is about not losing momentum, not stumbling over yourself, not getting stuck in your head. And so we build resources around ourselves to make sure that we can keep moving. The third principle is to inventory and use your assets. Many entrepreneurs, when they get ready to start a business, they really only think about, well, what's in my bank account right now? Or what are the one or two key relationships I have that might help me get my business off the ground? And you definitely want to know those things. Those are important. But those are not the only assets that you have. So I'm going to read a little list here because I can't remember all this off the top of my head. But you want to think about other relationships that you have in your life that may be encouraging to you, that may know clients that you might need to get to know, that may be aware of office spaces or warehouses that you want to move into. You just want to sit down and think through who are key relationships and how can they contribute to the starting of your business. You want to think about your reputation and how this will help or hurt you. You want to think about your experiences. What are all of the things that you've learned or done over your lifetime that can contribute to the success of this new venture? You want to think about any frameworks that you've learned or that you've developed on your own, or processes that help speed things up. Over time, you've learned things and perhaps you've even forgotten that you know them. You want to start to identify, what do I know about setting up this kind of business system, or onboarding or training employees, or about sales, or about setting up an office, or the structure, the layout that you need for an efficient space. So you want to be able to think about those kinds of things because it'll help you identify some of it'll basically help give you a leg up. Another thing you want to think about is the time and the energy that it's going to take and that you have available to start the business, and be honest about it. Most people can't grind away for 100 hours a week. And so you want to think about what do I have in terms of my time and energy, and how do I best focus that so that I can quickly accomplish the goals that I have. Because we all have limited time and energy, and most of us spend it on things that don't produce the greatest value. So you may not have everything that you need to easily jump into a $10 million business, and that's okay. Most people don't. But you want to have a broader sense of what resources do you come to the table with, and who do you know, and how you can work, because that starts to open up your imagination and your ability to see synergies that you can create within your own asset base. Additionally, it helps you take a realistic look at maybe some of the places where you don't have enough, or you're going to need to shore up some weaknesses, bring in partners, bring in friends, or whatever, so that you don't find yourself stuck in a spot that was foreseeable if you had just taken some time to inventory your assets. Now, the fourth principle is critical. Almost everybody misses it, and I can't overstate how important this fourth principle is. And that is you need to have and understand your clean books, or your financial. You need to hire a bookkeeper. Your bookkeeper should not be your friend. It shouldn't be your spouse. It shouldn't be that smart kid that you met that just graduated from college. It shouldn't be somebody who's really excited to learn QuickBooks. You want to hire somebody who understands bookkeeping, ideally understands your industry, and can help you provide clean books, accurate books, and timely financial statements. At a minimum, you should be receiving your financial statements once a month within the first week and a half of each month. Those financial statements will begin to help you and give information to you that will help you build your business. Without them, here's what happens. And this is a key thing that causes businesses to stall out. Without them, what happens is most business owners lead by their gut, and they lead by what's comfortable for them, and financially what they can imagine or keep track of in their mind. For most business owners, that maxes out around $1 million in complexity. They can't handle more than that, and it's one of the reasons why most businesses don't grow past $1 million in revenue. The other stall point that I frequently see is around $3 or $4 million in revenue, where they get businesses up to that size, and again, it just starts to max out. And so these are a little bit more skillful business owners, people who can juggle a little bit more, at least financially, intuitively in their minds. But I see it right around 3 or 4 million in revenue, they max out. And they just can't keep up with where everything's going because they're keeping it all in their head. And what they do is they will hit the brakes. They will let opportunities go by. They will come up with reasons to not pursue that sale or that customer, or to not bring on a new employee or a new partner, because they don't know how it's going to work. Clean, clear, current financials give you the transparency that you need to be able to project out and make some of those bigger decisions, those high value, high leverage decisions. Super important. Once you get to around $3 to $5 million in revenue, you're probably also going to want to bring in a fractional CFO. Your bookkeeper is not going to be able to provide very high level or maybe even medium level financial analysis. It's just not their training, it's just not their background, and it's an unfair expectation to put on them. But a fractional CFO, this is somebody it doesn't make sense to hire full time, because good CFOs are going to charge you a couple $100,000 a year minimum for their salaries. And so what you want to hire is someone that you can just get their attention for maybe a few hours a month, and they can provide a deeper level of analysis. But usually that complexity that analysis isn't really needed until you get around that $3 to $5 million mark in revenue. Then you want to start thinking about adding them. This is so important to your potential growth and to preventing artificial bottlenecks from stopping you from growing, that it's really one of the very first things you need to bring on board. Now, these bookkeepers don't have to be employed. It can be someone that you contract, and I often recommend that. So that's one of the first things you need to think about when you start your business is how am I going to do my bookkeeping, and who can help me out with this that already understands how to do this the right way. The fifth thing, and I see very few business owners do this or business leaders do this at the beginning, but the fifth thing that you need is to build your playbook. This is the policies, the procedures, the processes that you have in place that guide how your business should operate. And the reason people don't do this is kind of obvious. It's boring. It's not something that people really want to sit down and do. But what's not boring but is frustrating is having to train somebody again for the 12th time this year on how to do something when it could have been written down on a single page of paper, on a file, on a computer, or a video that they could follow and watch, and they could teach themselves how to do that. And so what you want to do is make yourself write out the playbook that you need so that people can self-manage. A way to do this is any kind of task that is going to be done more than once a year. That should be the clue that I need to write down the steps for this task, or video myself explaining the steps to this task. The methodology that I like to recommend, it's not the only way to do it, but if you're teaching somebody how to do the accounts payable, how to invoice someone, and you want to teach them how to do that, and you realize, okay, this is something I need to write down. As you teach it to that new employee, have them write it down. Have them bring what they wrote to you. You review it to make sure it's accurate. This becomes a really useful training tool for them because they're really, working with the material at a deeper level. And you've killed a couple of birds with one stone. You've taught somebody how to do something, and you got a written process down. And then you put that in a central place where people can find it, and you started to build out your playbook. That's what I typically recommend. It's not the only way to do it, but it is one of the easier ways to do it. The main point with playbooks is that if you don't have it in place, then everybody is going to be looking to you for direction for all of the little things. That's exhausting, it's frustrating, and it absolutely will keep your business small. When you start writing down the rules or the playbook so that anybody can figure out, how do I do the basics of this business, then you get consistency, you get alignment, it makes it easier for people to manage, it just makes the company easier to run. It's a key element to building a $10 million business that feels good once you're there. In a minute, I'm going to walk you through how to bring overwhelming value to your customers and how to position your business as premium. Additionally, I'm going to introduce to you an idea around how to prevent yourself from stalling out in one of the most common bottlenecks that fast growth businesses get stuck in. So the sixth principle that I want you to keep in mind for building a $10 million business is to bring overwhelming value to your customers. So this reminds me of a Zig Ziglar quote that you can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want in life. That's the concept here. So in your pursuit of $10 million, what can happen is we get fixated on making the sales, the $1 million projects, or the $10 coffee sale, whatever it is. We get fixated on the numbers, we get fixated on the dollars. Ultimately, your customers aren't interested in that. They want to know, are they being served well? Are they being taken care of well? And this is so critical for you to pay attention to in terms of making sure that your customers are receiving overwhelming value whenever they work with you. So a few questions you can ask yourself that help you identify, how do I provide overwhelming value to my customers. The first thing is, what does my customer really want? What do they want when they're buying this from me? When they're coming to have me do a project for them, when they're coming, if it's a medical clinic, using that as an example, and they're coming and they're walking in the office and they're feeling whatever they feel, what are they hoping for from this experience? If they're walking into the coffee shop and they want to buy a cup of coffee, why are they here and what are they hoping for from the experience? How do I get them that? If you serve that to them, then they're going to keep coming back to you. If you just serve the appointment, if you just serve the sell the project, if you just make the cup of coffee, they can get those things anywhere from all of your competition. What you want to find out is, what did they actually want when they came in or when they came to you? Offer them that, and you'll have them. A couple of other questions you can think about is, what are they thinking about in terms of the experience that they want to have as they work with you or as they buy your product or your service? What do they want in terms of outcomes? What are they hoping this will accomplish for them, or what will this do for them? And sometimes you may think, well, they just want a cup of coffee. Well, is that really true? Maybe they're coming in. My very first business was a coffee shop, which is why I'm using that as an example. People come into coffee shops for a lot of different reasons. A lot of them are looking for social connection. They're looking for a hello. They're looking for somebody to be friendly to them in the morning. And that's a surprisingly important part of the morning for a lot of people. And if they don't get that, they may go to another coffee shop where people just notice them when they walk in and smile at them and maybe even remember their drink. That little acknowledgement can be a big deal. So you want to think about what people are really looking for and what they want. The idea is to deliver so much value to your client that it wouldn't make sense to them to go to anyone else. Which brings us to the seventh principle, and it's a related principle, but not exactly the same. And that is to position yourself as distinctive or premium. There's only really two ways to compete in business. One is to compete on price, and the other one is to compete on being distinctive or premium in some way. If you're building up to a $10 business, you are by definition a small business. You cannot compete on price, probably. Very rare exceptions to that. But most businesses that are able to compete successfully on price are huge because they can work with economies of scale. They can control their markets. They have resources at their disposal that a sub $10 million in revenue company just doesn't have. So what you need to do is to really compete on being distinctive. You offer something that's different, something that's better, something that's faster, something that's nicer than the other person. Then you can compete and outperform the big. So there's three basic ways that you make yourself distinct. The first is to provide better customer service, to make the experience of working with you a nicer experience, a faster experience, a smoother experience, an experience where they feel more confidence, where they feel better taken care of. Some kind of unique, higher level customer experience with you will make you distinctive and will cause them to remember you and come back. The second way you make yourself distinctive is by offering a distinctive product. Offer something that is faster, that works better, that is nicer than what the bigs offer. That also helps you stand out, and people will come to you because what you offer is nicer. I'm thinking about an ice cream shop that's near us. It's located maybe a half a block away from a very big franchise of ice cream shops. And what's interesting is, on a hot summer day, and the other thing about their location is it's awful. It's like buried in a warehouse area. The franchise ice cream shop is in this really nice area that gets a lot of traffic. On a hot summer day, the local ice cream shop will actually have a line outside their door regularly, whereas the franchise, which also serves good ice cream, won't. And one of the things is they provide very distinctive ice cream. They use a lot of local ingredients, and they have flavors there that you just cannot get anywhere else. They're always very nice. They're always very friendly. It's fast service. And so they provide something that makes it worth driving past the franchise, which does a good job, but it's not as nice, not as distinctive, not as good as going to the local ice cream shop. That's an example of distinctiveness and how they're able to command and actually compete with a much better known name. The last area that you want to be premium is provide superior results. And so specifically, you're in a service industry of some kind, you want to make sure that the ROI or the results that you produce for your clients are superior, that they're far above what they'll get anywhere else. So it's not just providing the service, that you're actually thinking about what is the client or the customer trying to get out of this? What do they need to get out of this? Or what do they need your service to help them accomplish? And how do you somehow multiply that for them if you can? Because if you can, they're for sure going to keep coming back to you. Now, the eighth principle is to build a scalable team. This is super important. Many businesses, when they first start out, are so desperate for employees or staff that they'll kind of work with anybody. And that's understandable, I get it. The problem is as you start to grow, these folks can't often grow with the organization. Their drive may not be there, their ability to handle complexity or their interest in it may not be there. And this will create bottlenecks. And these are the most painful bottlenecks that I see as businesses grow from 0 to 10 million. Are the ones where they had a team that got them up to their first million or their first 3 million. But then as things became more complex, as you needed to put more trust in their decision making, as you might want to promote them into positions of greater responsibility or management, you start to find that they either don't have the interest or the aptitude to perform at that level. So what can you do about that? Because it's a very real challenge and it's a relationally difficult challenge. And the best thing that I can recommend is that when you have this $10 million version of you in mind, and you've mapped out a path to get yourself there, you want to start hiring people who can perform in that company. You want to start bringing in people for the company that you're building, not the company that you have right now. And if you start looking for that and you start bringing those people in or training your team to get to that place, then you'll start to avoid or at least mitigate those bottlenecks. The second thing you want to do is you want to be regularly talking to your team and setting them up to imagine this larger company, this more complex organization that you're trying to build, so that they're thinking of themselves in that way. And as they do that, you can begin to give them opportunities to test and to see how effective are they at differing levels of responsibility. One of the key mistakes that you need to avoid at this place or at this level is promoting people or giving people fancy titles. This happens all the time in small companies and they just shoot themselves in the foot with it. You have a company of 5 people and that's it, and everyone's a president or a vice president. Sounds fancy, makes them feel a little better when they're talking to clients or customers. Doesn't mean anything. And if you have no employees at all, it really doesn't mean anything other than all of the vice presidents. And what happens is when those vice presidents actually need to manage 12 people or 25 people or 100 people, they don't know how because it wasn't really ever part of their job. But they had the title and they feel entitled to keep the title as the business grows. So what I recommend is have modest titles when you start out, modest job descriptions, clear ones, but modest ones. And then as you build, you can grow those out, but put people in the right places. There's a Jim Collins quote that you want to put the right people on the right seats in the bus. And so if you're going to build this $10 million bus, you want to make sure you understand who are the right people for the right seats and make sure you don't put the wrong people in those seats because that just creates really painful complications for you. Now, the last principle, this is a bonus principle. This is my principle number 9, and it's one that I actually recommend to clients a lot. It's one of the most valuable tests that you can use to actually know if your business is growing in the right direction. And that is go away. Take a vacation. Take as long of a vacation as you can. If at the very beginning it's just a long weekend, then do that. Then take a 1-week vacation, then plan your next 2-week vacation, then plan a month vacation. Here's why. It's not so much about taking the vacation. I don't care about that. I mean, I do. I hope you take vacations. Why run a business? Why do all the risk? Why do all the work if you can't take vacation? But here's the point of the vacation is if you can build a business that runs well without you and even grows in your absence, then you know that you're onto something. You've built something that's valuable. You've built something that's scalable. If your business breaks when you're gone for a day, or if nothing can happen, then you know you really haven't built a business yet. You've just got something that's resting on your shoulders. So the discipline of trying to figure out, okay, if I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks and I don't want to have to be on the phone every day answering calls or answering texts, what do I need to do over the next couple of weeks to prepare so that I can be gone for 2 weeks? Or what do I need to do over the next 3 months so that I can take a 2-week vacation so that I can be gone? And not only is the business fine, but here's the other part, I don't have a stack of work waiting for me when I get back. My encouragement to my clients is to plan for that. Prep to be gone and have as little pressure and little contact with your team as possible while you're gone, and to prepare to not have a lot of work waiting for you when you come back. Then you take your vacation and then you see how well did that work? How many times did you still have to take calls? How much work was actually waiting for you when you got back? What were the lessons learned from that? How do you, the next time that you schedule your next vacation, how do you make sure it's even easier for you to be gone and you have even less work waiting for you when you get back? As you do iterations on this, practice taking these vacations, and I'm being dead serious about this. This is one of the most powerful exercises you can go through that will help you stress test your company, stress test your systems, stress test your team in an appropriate way that will help it become stronger. And then as you do this yourself, start sending your team on vacations. If your key players can't go, then it's also not a very strong company. So you want to be able to have, this is where practical work-life balance can become a tool that you use to actually build a healthier, more robust company. So those are the principles that if you put them in place, they will naturally lead into or naturally result in a company that's scalable. The next video breaks down how to make your company worth 2 times more to private equity or to a strategic buyer. Click it and I'll show you how that works.